Are you breaking up with me?
It's not you. It's me.
Yeah, she's tied up inside, so she's not going anywhere. Mm-hmm.
Eli, Iris. Shh, baby, you're on the phone.
Companion is the latest thriller, sci-fi, romance, horror flick to hit theaters. Yeah, there's a lot of genres mixed into this one. The movie is directed by Drew Hancock, and it stars Jack Quaid as Josh and Sophie Thatcher as Iris. And at the beginning of this film, you see both Josh and Iris go to a weekend getaway with a bunch of friends at a remote location. Looks like they're just gonna party, have a fun time, but because this isn't just a romance, it's also a thriller and sci-fi flick with a little bit of horror sprinkled in, you know things are gonna take a brutal, bloody turn. And they do. Now that's the most synopsis that I can actually give you for this film. You know me, I like to go into more plot details. I like to give you a little bit more of the movie, but I really don't want to spoil things. And I feel like after that amount of synopsis that I gave you, I would really start spoiling things. So I'm going to stop it right there. If any of you have seen the trailer for this film or certain posters for this film, you know the big reveal that's coming. But I will say happily that while they give you the big reveal in the trailers, there's a few other reveals throughout this movie, a few twists and turns that make it an enjoyable time. But we'll get into my positives and my negatives here in a second. If this is the first time you found my channel, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button, check out all the different content on my channel. Whether you like movie reviews like this or Blu-ray talk or just ranked list videos, I've got a little bit of everything on my channel and I'd love for you to check it out. All right, guys, let's get into my positives and my negatives for Companion. My first positive for this movie is going to be the acting, and while I think everybody did a great job all around in this movie, I think both Jack Quaid and Sophie Thatcher do an even better job than everyone else, so we're going to focus on them in this point. Jack Quaid, of course, is Huey in The Boys, and in that show, he plays a very timid guy, and he really seems to have made that his thing. He's kind of a timid guy. He wants to stand up for people. You want to like him. He played almost the same character in Scream 5, where he turned out to be one of the Ghostface killers, and then in this film, as Josh, he's playing sort of that same character, but he plays that character really well, and that character fits into this story really well. Moving on to Sophie Thatcher, she plays Iris in this film, and I can't really go into too much detail for her character to avoid spoilers, but I will say that she plays a very convincing character in her role as well, and previously the only thing I remembered her from was Sister Barnes from Heretic, and I thought she did an outstanding job in that film. She brings that same level of sort of scared, not sure what's going on character to this movie that she had in Heretic, but just like in Heretic, she also is able to overcome those fears and move to the next level for her character. And I thought, again, she played that really well. So you're getting sort of the same character that we've seen out of both of them from the past, but that serves this story so well that I had to make it a positive. My next positive for this movie is going to be a little bit of humor that they sprinkled throughout. You already get a thriller element to this movie, a little bit of romance, a little bit of horror, and then you get a huge sci-fi element, but they were able to sprinkle in a little bit of humor, a few moments of levity that really helped the audience, because while you're waiting for these twists and turns to happen, while you're getting these big reveals that sort of switch the movie up from going from just a thriller to a sci-fi thriller, what I really liked about that is throughout these moments with these characters that were really dark or serious moments, you would get a little bit of humor, especially one point where it's a very serious moment for the characters, but they throw in a scene that involves a guy in a dinosaur costume dancing. I can't really explain it from here without giving spoilers, so I'll just say that that scene in particular made me laugh the most, and it really came at a great time because you had all of this serious stuff going on, and they're like, let's make the audience laugh for a second. I really appreciated that. Now, I wouldn't necessarily classify this movie as horror myself. The only reason I threw it in the horror genre at the beginning of this video is because that's one of the things it's classified as online. So I understand people that are going, whoa, this wasn't horror at all. Very sci-fi, very thriller, and I would agree with you, maybe even some romance, but not necessarily horror. But my next positive for this movie is actually some really creepy visuals that you get, whether it's outside in the daylight or at night with some fog. I thought those visuals were good, but most specifically, Sophie Thatcher's character of Iris has a few moments where she genuinely creeped me out, whether she's hiding in the corner of her room or something that happens with her eyes that I can't really go into detail here because I don't want to spoil things, but something happens with her eyes, and as the camera will pan around the room, you see that, and it's a really creepy visual, so I appreciated that too. And the final positive I have for this movie is the quick pace. I love a movie that can stick to almost an hour and a half runtime and keep my attention the entire time while giving me a very fast pace. Again, we've talked about this in in a lot of films over the years where we talk about the pace of a film, whether it's too slow, too fast, maybe I wanted more out of it, but I think at the hour and 37-minute runtime that this movie had, it was a perfect pace. I didn't check my watch even once. I enjoyed myself the entire time. I never thought that the movie went on too long. I never thought, oh man, there's too many endings to this film. I thought that it filled that hour and 37 minutes almost perfectly. There's nothing I would chop out of it. There's also nothing that I would want added to it. It told a great story with a great pace, so that's my final positive. That'll move us on to my negatives, and my first negative for this film is going to be that the balance between all the different genres in this movie isn't the best. Now, I already said that I appreciated some horror elements that we got. There is a romance story in this movie. There's also a thriller element. And then, of course, you have the big sci-fi reveal of this film, which is the big bulk of this movie. And I feel like the different genres that they threw in here don't always balance out super well. Again, I think the thriller element is more just keeping you at the edge of your seat. That's how I view thrillers. I also see the sci-fi element in this movie completely. That's the headline genre for this film. But they also throw in a romance story, and they also throw in a horror elements to this movie. And I think that all of that works. And I'm not saying it doesn't work, but there is a bit of an imbalance between those genres. I wish they would have trimmed that down a little bit, maybe got rid of one of the other elements, whether the romance element from different characters too, not just the two lead characters. There's different romance elements in this movie that I do feel like they don't slow the movie down, but they just sort of feel out of place. Kind of hard to explain, but I just feel like one of my biggest negatives for this movie is that it feels a little imbalanced throwing all of those genres together. My other negative for this movie is that the main character, who's sort of the antagonist for this film, always seems to have a plan that's coming together no matter what. And that can get a little irritating sometimes. That can be a little grating on the viewer because you're watching this film, yeah, there might be obstacles thrown in that character's way, but they always seem to find a way around that pretty conveniently. And I understand to a certain extent, you gotta further the plot of this movie. You gotta get to where you want to get to in the third act, so you gotta get that character to that space. But I think it might have been a little better if you had tightened up that character's motives. Maybe then the convenience would have been a little better in and of itself. And I understand that maybe I'm grasping at straws here. When I do a review for a film, I'm always trying to look at the good and the bad, the positive and the negative, the things I like, the things I dislike. I'm trying to figure those things out. And so when I look at this movie, there's a lot about it that I liked. But when it comes to the negatives, I felt like the genres could have been tightened up a little better. And I felt like the main character or the main antagonist for this film, their plot could have been tightened up a little bit better too. But that's not saying I didn't like this movie at all, because I had a great time with Companion. Overall, I would highly recommend it to anybody who enjoys the sci-fi genre especially. I do think there's aspects of the thriller, romance, and horror elements of this film that you'll enjoy as well. But again, if you're a big sci-fi fan, definitely check out Companion. Or if you're just a fan of Sophie Thatcher or Jack Quaid, again, I think they give great performances. But guys, those are just my opinions because that's my review for Companion. Guys, have you had a chance to see Companion yet? If you have, let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know what you're thinking about this movie. Maybe you liked it more than I did. Maybe you didn't like it as much as I did. I'd love to know all your thoughts down below. And finally, guys, if you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button because it helps the video, it helps the channel, and it helps me right here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Alright guys, we got to the end of my Companion movie review, and this is one where I feel like a spoiler review would be worth doing if I had the time. As it stands, I don't think I will. Maybe I'll go into some spoilers in my end of month recap for January. That's probably what I'll do. But in the meantime, guys, if you want to check out any of the other content on my channel, well, I've got all of my horror movie reviews right there, and I've got all of my 2025 movie reviews right there.